Is Michael Kareem. I'm the chair of the Governance and Audit Committee at Bracknell Forest Council. I'd like to welcome everybody who is joining online and in the council chamber. I'd like to welcome the press, any members of the public, officers, and of course the councillors. The meeting is being recorded and also streamed. I'd like to ask if there are any apologies or members of the committee who are joining remotely.
Good evening, everyone. I think the only apology is Councillor O'Regan, who hasn't yet managed to join the call. Are there any other apologies? No, I think everyone else is here, Chair.
And just as a point to note, if anyone is joining remotely, only those people who are present in the room may vote. When asked to speak, please turn on your microphones and make sure you turn off the microphone when you've finished, please. Are there any declarations of interest? No declarations of interest. And are there any urgent items of business?
None notified, Chair.
Thank you. We're going to the minutes, so you got it there? Okay. All right. So item 3 on the agenda, minutes of the previous meeting to approve as a record of the minutes of the committee held on 22nd of March 23 and the annual meeting on the 24th of May 23. Will anyone move the minutes, please?
I'm happy to move the meeting, particularly of the first one, because I chaired it. I think I'm the only one that was here, so I'll move the minutes of that meeting and of the 24th of May.
Okay, thank you very much. And would anyone like to second the recommendations?
Councillor Neil, seconded.
Thank you very much, Councillor Neil. Would the mover like to talk to the recommendations beyond what's already been said? Would the seconder like to speak on the recommendations at all? Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak? Okay. Does the mover of the motion wish to sum up? No? That's very good. Then all those in favour of the recommendations, please show by raising your hand. That was unanimous. Right, thank you very much. So I'd like to move to item 5 on the agenda, the external audit progress report, to advise members of the progress in completing the audit of the 2020-21 and 21-22 financial statements. And I'm pleased to report we have Andrew Britton with us from Ernst & Young.
If I could just do a very brief introduction, thank you, Chair, before I hand over to Andrew. This report sets out the situation around the previous year's accounts. We're joined online by Arthur Parker, who is able to answer any specific questions about the accounts. Arthur is our Chief Accountant and very effectively manages the process of preparing the accounts every year. So Bracknell Forest has every year managed to prepare accounts in line with the statutory deadlines set out in the accounts and audit regulations, and that's a really good start. However, we are caught in a situation where we have a bit of a backlog, as many councils do, around the actual external audit being completed of the previous year's financial statements. A lot of work has been done, but there are technical reasons which Andrew, I'm sure, will explain around why we haven't quite got to the the full point of being able to approve the accounts. The key point for the committee this evening is just to understand the timescales for each of the years so that you can be satisfied that we can monitor them effectively as we go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, members. So, by way of introduction, Andrew Britton, audit partner at EY. I'm responsible for the external audit of Bracknell Forest's accounts. As Stuart's articulated there, we have a number of years of audit now open. The main reason for the delays has been, just to explain, we audit the accounts of the council, but included within the council's accounts are the assets or net assets or net liabilities, depending on the valuations at the time of the pension scheme, the local government pension scheme, which the council is an admitted body of, which is a Berkshire-wide scheme. The Berkshire Pension Fund is audited as part of the Windsor and Maidenhead, Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead audit, and that's actually audited by another firm, Deloitte. We, rather than repeat all the work that they do on the pensions numbers, in order to get assurance over the pensions disclosures within the council's accounts, we rely on something referred to as an IS 19 assurance letter. That's something that firms provide to each other to avoid multiple audits of essentially the same numbers within the accounts. So we rely on the work that Deloitte's do in order to be able to conclude our audit. Unfortunately, for complications at the Berkshire Pension Fund scheme audit, they were not able to provide or have not been able to provide the completion of their work in relation to giving us assurances. So, as you'll see on Arthur's report there, 2021, we actually only got the letter last month. We then have to do some follow-up work on that. I am pleased to be able to report to the committee tonight that we have completed that work. So Councillor Allen will be relieved to hear that, having sat through many of these updates previously. So therefore we are in a position to be able to conclude the 2021 audit. Unfortunately, timing has meant we weren't able to bring that to this committee, but however, we will bring our report, and the council will obviously represent the completed final financial statements we're proposing to the next committee in July. Okay. So that's the status of 2021. 21-22, there will be a recurring theme here, I'm afraid. 21-22, we did commence and are partially completed in terms of our work. We have time scheduled over July and August to complete the work that we have to do in response to the 21-22 accounts. There is, however, there will be the same issue in terms of waiting for the IS 19 assurances on the 21-22 the Berkshire Pension Scheme, obviously, as I say, part of the Royal Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead audit. We are not. We are aware of being told by Deloitte that work will happen during the summer. However, we've got no firm guarantees, obviously, that will be the case. However, we are continuing with our work during July and August, and will therefore hopefully be able to come to the September meeting with an update in terms of what is still outstanding at that point in relation to the 21-22 audit. 22-23, we obviously will be in a position where we can commence the 22-23 audit once we finish the 21-22 audit. So therefore we'll look to be planning our work towards the end of this calendar year, with a view to doing an interim visit in March time, and then the final audit sort of this time next year. That I appreciate, therefore, is we're concluding on 3 audits in a 12-month period, so there is an element of catching up here that we're very conscious we need to do. We've discussed this timetable with Arthur and with Stuart, and clearly, whilst if things change, we'll look to accelerate that. That's currently how it's planned in. I should say at this point, and those of you who watch the Public Audits Committee or the various select committees will be aware that, as Stuart said, there are a number of councils who have open audits for a variety of reasons at this point, and DLUC and the FRC are looking to solutions that may be able to accelerate that. Therefore, if something happens in relation to that and we are able to alter the timing and accelerate the timing of the 22-23 audit, we will do that, and obviously we'll keep the committee informed. Happy to take any questions on any of those years at this point.
Well, thank you very much, Andrew, for being so candid with us. It sounds like there is some light at the end of the tunnel, but still some hurdles to overcome. Councillor Allen.
Yeah, just a comment actually, just to put things in perspective. I went to a couple of years ago. I went to a seminar on governance and audit, and what they did point out at that was that about 5 or 6 years ago, 95% of councils met the deadline, which was I think at the end of September at the time. And over the progressing 3 or 4 years, it's down to about 40% now. That only 40% of councils actually meet the deadline, which is now moved back to November.
It's actually less. It was actually less than that for right. 21-22.
Okay, so it has been dropping rapidly from the really good scenario about 6 years ago to today. So it's not just us.
Well, thank you, Councillor Allen. Obviously, we'd like to be shining stars, I guess, and it's our mission as a committee to try and support being above that, well above that. Any other questions? Yes,
Chairman, I wonder if, thinking ahead to July, if it might be helpful if Andrew could explain what the committee can expect to see in the report, because it's quite a detailed assessment of our accounts, and it goes a bit broader than just the numbers.
Indeed, correct, Stuart. So we will issue, as I say, alongside obviously the final version of the statement of accounts, we'll issue what we call our audit results report. Our audit results report will cover and I appreciate there's a disconnect here in terms of the change of membership, but we had previously presented to the committee an audit plan. The audit plan highlighted the key audit risks as we saw them in relation to auditing the council's accounts. Now, some of those risks are risks that, as a result of auditing standards we have on every single audit we do, and some are more specific to the situation that the council finds itself in. So, for instance, one of our risks was around the pensions numbers and disclosures. We also have a risk which is common to all audits, which is the risk of management override. That's not a reflection on management of Bracknell Council. Specifically, it's a reflection that we always, as auditors, have to be professionally sceptical about whether management might, by error or by fraud, be moving or manipulating the numbers within the accounts. So we will report back on all of the key risks that we identified in the plan to you, explaining what we've done and the conclusion that we have reached. In addition to the commentary on the financial statements, or the conclusions on the financial statements, there is another part of the audit that we are, as external auditors, required to do, which is different for those of you familiar with corporate accounts and corporate audit opinions. In addition to the opinion on the financial statements, there is also something called a value for money conclusion. Just very briefly, the value for money conclusion is not a conclusion on whether the council is providing value for money or not. It's a conclusion, so it's a bit misleading in that regard. It's actually a conclusion as to whether there are arrangements in place to deliver efficiency, of economy, effectiveness in terms of the governance, working with third parties, making informed decisions. And it's a criteria that's set out by the NAO. So we report against that. We provide an overall conclusion within our opinion on the financial statements, and then we will follow that up with a separate, more detailed commentary on our value for money work. In addition to that, we will also share as part of the report our proposed opinion, so the actual audit opinion, and also we'll share the letter of representation, which is something that Stuart, as Section 151, and Michael, you as chair of the audit committee, will sign to represent the assertions that the council are making as part of their presentation of their financial statements. So all of that is contained within the audit results report.
Well, thank you very much, Andrew. That's extremely helpful for everybody. Are there any other questions from the committee for Andrew? Thank you very much. No other questions. I'd like to now move to item 6, which is the internal audit annual assurance report 2022 to 2023, to deliver an annual internal audit opinion. This is time to inform review of the annual governance statement, the AGS, and Sally Hendrick is reporting. So over to you, Sally.
Thank you, Chairman. Sally Hendrick, Head of Audit and Risk Management. I'm responsible for developing the annual internal audit plan and for delivering that service during the year. And under public sector internal audit standards, I'm required to produce an annual report and opinion on the control environment at the council, which covers not only the financial controls but also the wider operational controls as well. So the committee this evening is receiving this report to note. As I said, it's something that is produced on an annual basis. It's quite a lengthy report, so I'm just going to draw your attention to specific elements within this report, and in particular to my actual opinion itself, which sits on page 17. So if you look at page 17, my Head of Internal Audit opinion is set out in detail here in the box here, my opinion for the year. And based on the work that we've carried out and the findings that we have come about as part of the audit work, I have concluded that I can only give partial assurance opinion on the adequacy of the internal control, risk management and governance framework for 22-23, and that is based on the work that has actually been carried out and the weaknesses that have actually been drawn out during the course of those audits. So I draw your attention then to the table below, which sets out the summary of the 22-23 audit outcomes and the opinion levels that have been given. So you will see from here there are a number of what we would call partial assurance opinions. The definition of our opinions is actually set out a couple of pages earlier in the report, but these are where we have not been able to conclude that the controls were fully satisfactory. But you will see that they are declining in number. So we do have a reduced number of partial opinions compared to the previous year. The cause for concern, which is leading me to give the partial assurance opinion, is basically to do with the implementation of recommendations from previous years, and where we haven't been able to conclude that major recommendations that we've raised in the past have actually been addressed. But we can see a reduced number of partial opinions coming through in this year. So that's the position we are at with this. I was going to draw your attention then to the further detail that we have on that. So if we go down to page 19, we start to see here the conclusions 19 and 20 of those areas where we identified high priority issues, and they're listed individually, and where the opinions are, we've set out what those are in the table, and the main reasons for those opinions. So from this you can see those areas where we've identified high priority issues that we've drawn to the attention of management for them to take forward and action. So that's all set out in here. You will see there's actually quite a number of those partial assurance opinions which relate to schools, which are clearly autonomous bodies. So that further reduces the number of audit assurance opinions where I'm only giving a partial assurance opinion. There's actually a reduced number of those that are relating to the council itself. A lot of those are also relating to the schools. So again, showing a certain amount of progress there. As I said, the main concern for me is issues with major recommendations that we've made in the past not being taken forward and actioned, and that's why I have the conclusion on my report. And you can see if you go down to section 4.3 on page 23, this is my update on the audits that we carried out in early years, 21-22, and prior to that, where we have previously identified major recommendations, and I'm providing in the last column here an update on where we are at the moment on that. And you'll see, if you look in that list, there are a number of them where those recommendations have not been addressed. And that, again, as I said, is what's sort of leading me down the path of still giving a partial assurance opinion. What I would say is that we have taken steps to assist management with taking this forward to try and address these areas of concern by setting up a recommendation tracker. And that is now being taken very seriously. So we have got some updates that we have had for those opinions that have only a satisfactory opinion in the past. We've been using that tracker to look at those audits as well, and you'll see on section 4.5 we're giving an update in there, but there again it's again showing quite a low level of implementation of recommendations and actions, and this is where we're looking to see improvement moving forward, and to see that action is being taken to address the audit recommendations that have been raised. One of the things that we are required to do under the public sector internal audit standards is to consider whether we are complying with public sector internal audit standards. Every year we do a review to check that we are satisfied with that by carrying out a self-assessment, and I've done that this year. In addition to that, every 5 years we are required to have an external review of our performance as an internal audit service, and the last review that we had carried out was in March 2022, which came out very well. Very few points that came out of it, and in the table here I've actually set out where we are, given an update on the actions that were identified at that external review that was carried out in March 22 by SIPFA, by the Chartered Institute of Public Financial Accountants. So that's an independent review of us identifying just a couple of areas really for improvement, and I'm giving you an update of where we are with that. The only area where we haven't fully addressed the actions that they identified for us to take forward is around the use of data analytics. We have done some training on that, but since then the staff that we had that had the training on that have left the council, some have retired, so we do need to do further data analytical training to enable the auditors to use these techniques to improve the effectiveness of our internal audit and improve efficiency. One of the points that was raised by the external assessment was it was a proposal that we take on some apprentices, and we have done that. We've taken on 2 apprentices. They started at the end of November 2022, and that was to try and address our resourcing issues, because we do have a lot of difficulty recruiting. So the apprentices have been in place now roughly 6 months, so they are progressing very well through the programme, but they will take some time to get up to speed. So it does put a little bit of pressure on our resources around delivery. But we have managed to still deliver, as you will see from the earlier table, 53 audits during 22-23, which is which I'm very, very pleased that we've delivered so much audit work. I think in terms of the rest of the report, it's generally self-explanatory, and I wasn't going to raise any further issues apart from drawing your attention to the section on page 29, which is just an update that I provide you around sort of counter fraud and the work that is done to prevent and investigate counter fraud around the council. In particular, for the benefits investigation, where we have housing benefit and potential cases of abuse of housing benefit, those are investigated by a part of the Department for Work and Pensions. So there's reference in this which sets out the detail of that, of the position on those. We've also, during the year, done some joint working with the Department for Works and Pensions on a benefits case, which was proved very successful, and we'll be looking to try and do some more joint working with DWP. I'm also referring here to a blue badge, some blue badge work that we've done, some proactive work we've done around blue badges. We did receive some funding that was agreed by CMT, by the corporate management team, in around, I think, 2020 to carry out work on counter fraud, and this is the funding we're using to carry out this work around the blue badges. I don't think there's anything else I was going to add to that. But I'm very happy to take any questions that anybody might have on the paper that we've got here.
Well, Sally, thank you very much for giving that overview of what I felt was a very well written report and very clear. So if anyone hasn't had the chance to fully read it, I would encourage you to do so. Obviously, there's been a backdrop of some very challenging circumstances, COVID, and so on, but we've moved beyond COVID, of course, and it would be interesting to understand a little bit more your thoughts or the thoughts of anybody else as to why certain things may not have been followed up. I appreciate that you've now got the tracker in place, so that sounds like an excellent tool to support monitoring and making appropriate decisions. Obviously, data analytics training, it's challenging when you train people and then they leave, and then you're trying to recruit more people against the backdrop of a challenging recruitment situation. So maybe you could just cover some of those points, and then I'd like to open it up to further questions from others.
In terms of the progress with the recommendations from the previous audits, certainly some of it was down to COVID. We've also had quite a high turnover of staff, and sometimes there wasn't always handover of the audit reports from one senior manager to another. So I think that was also another issue. I think it's fair to say there's also a lot of resourcing pressures across the council. Wherever we go to audit, teams are under significant resourcing pressures, and that's also adding to the difficulties with implementing audit recommendations. And I do try to be very clear to departments when we're auditing them that they mustn't sign up to actions that they cannot possibly deliver. That sometimes we need to perhaps find a different way to address risks, and I think it will become much more accepted moving forward that people do need to look quite thoroughly at the audit reports and at what we're saying, and only really consider and put their name to actions in audit reports that they are clearly going to be able to actually take forward and deliver. So I think I would see that as a sort of progress moving forward. I think the tracker is certainly great progress for us and is giving senior managers much greater oversight of the position on the individual audits. So that's a very sort of helpful thing that we've now got in place. And we will, I think, moving forward, be trying to develop some reports that we can run out of the tracker to support the management teams to identify where actions that have been agreed are not being taken forward and implemented, because there's very little. In some cases, we do find situations where we've been asked to do audits and then we find that then the actions haven't been taken forward, and that can be quite frustrating from our point of view, and also probably from a senior management point of view. So the tracker is, I think, key to the process, really, to try and drive that forward. What I would say, I do want to reiterate, and I've had discussions with Stuart as the Section 151 officer for this, Stuart McKellar, that we can see an element of progress, because there do seem to be a reduced number of partial assurance opinions that we are giving. It's just trying to get on top of the recommendations when they are raised to make sure those are implemented, and that's what we need to work on now.
Well, thank you for that, Sally. It's reassuring to know that you have some excellent recommendations in place, and it's our duty as a committee to support the work to make sure that it can practically move forwards. And certainly nobody should be signing up for actions that are not achievable, because we're then setting people up for failure. So we need to make sure that we are supporting people to put practical actions in place that can be achieved. Would anybody else on the committee like to make any points, or does anybody have any questions based on what Sally has reported? Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Chairman. I like this new recommendation tracker. It's quite useful, but one of the things I had was I wanted to try and understand the numbers on a particular line. It didn't seem to make sense to me. So you've got the priority of recommendations raised. So you've got these sort of three main columns of priority recommendations. I'm looking at page 43 at the moment. And for example, if I look at the 2021-22 audits, the first line is the council-wide e-care audit. Now, just looking at the priority recommendations raised, so there's 6 moderates. Now, it says in that they've implemented as of 12th of June, they've done 2 of them. 1 is in progress. Does that mean the other 3 haven't been started? So really, so mentally you've got to do the maths unless you put another column in saying which ones haven't been started yet. Because that actually might be quite useful to have that extra bit of information, because if you know what hasn't been started, that really tells you where the real work is.
We can certainly do that moving forward. It might make it all quite small.
It might make it an eye chart if you're not careful.
But I think it would be, and generally what we can probably do actually is remove the critical column, because we generally wouldn't be using this particular table for the critical recommendations, because with those audits we would be doing formal follow-up. So we wouldn't be using the tracker for that, because we'd actually have formal audits where which we would use to follow up those particular audits. But yes, certainly I think moving forward we can certainly add in columns for the outstanding ones where they haven't been progressed at all.
Yeah, I agree. If you take out the criticals, that takes out 3 columns, which gives you then 3 columns for the missing ones.
Yes.
So the table will be the same size then. It would work quite well. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that suggestion, Councillor Allen, and Sally for looking at seeing how that can actually work. And I would suggest maybe drafting that and bringing it to the committee for people to have a look at and see how practical that is. So thank you very much. So we have Councillor Zarudin with a question.
Thank you, Chairman. My question is regarding data analytics vacant position. So how long is this position vacant for, and what's the targeted date to fill this to get this moving?
It's not a position as such, it's processes. So what the external assessor was advising us to do was to make better use of data analytics, to analyse data, to try and draw out particular areas of risk or weakness. And that's something which we do very little of. We tend to do a lot of detailed substantive sample testing. And he was suggesting that we would use data analytics to carry that out. As you say, I think it's based on, the delay is really based on the fact that we do need to recruit to the principal auditor post. I think that's what you're referring to as really. And that post is, I've completed the job evaluation because it's a change in pay scale. So I've completed the evaluation and I'm meeting with HR next week. So we should be going out to advertise then. But what I would say is we do have a lot of difficulty recruiting. So we will have to see what happens when we go out to the market in terms of whether we are able to recruit. So we're trying to make the position as attractive as possible when we go out to the market to try and recruit. But it is very challenging to recruit auditors at the moment in internal audit, and I also think probably on the external audit side as well that Andrew Britton from EY would probably also agree with me on that. It just seems to not be an easy market to recruit from at the moment, and that is why we were actually trying to develop our own auditors by taking on the apprentices, but clearly it's a long journey before they get to the level of a principal auditor. So if we are unable to recruit to the post of principal auditor in the first round, we will probably try to do some data analytics training anyway for the rest of the team again, so as to prevent any further delay to that.
Just one follow-up question on that. So regarding the data analytics tool and the project itself about training the staff, so has the decisions been made on what tools to be used and what's the level of training needed for the staff?
Actually, it's our intention to actually use just some basic tools. We can do quite a lot just by using Excel, and it's learning the skills to be able to do that interrogation on Excel. We did have a training course, as I said, that went through the use of Excel for data analytics, and it can be quite powerful. But unfortunately, the staff that received that training have subsequently left the organisation, so we're back to square one, which is something we were talking about earlier on. But it would be that we would be trying to use in the first instance, just using Excel.
Thank you for the good questions, Councillor Zarudin, and for the answers, Sally. That's very helpful. I'd just like to home in on the staffing situation, if I may. You've highlighted that a couple of apprentices were trained and then subsequently lost, I believe. Would you say that staff retention is a challenge as well as the recruitment?
They weren't actually apprentices that joined and left. They were actually senior auditors that I'd recruited. And what we find when we go out to the market is quite often the applicants that are applying for the jobs are older, and they were at the end of their career. And one of them basically retired, and the other one gave up work for a few months, and I think now she's joined another council, but she just wanted to take a rest for a while, and it is because they are generally closer to 65 than they are to 25. So it is a real difficulty. The market is very, very difficult.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Maybe I can ask Andrew, as Andrew is here, for any thoughts on recruitment for such positions and how the committee may be able to support in this.
Well, I can certainly comment on the first one. I agree with Sally in terms of the audit profession more widely, and often a route into internal audit is from external audit, and people who have qualified as external auditors then moving across into internal audit. We have seen certainly a kind of post-COVID, and I don't think this is unique to the accounting profession, people kind of reconsider what they wanted to do with their lives, and there was also obviously I think it was colloquially termed the Great Resignation, because that sort of stored up. So we have seen quite a churn subsequent to the pandemic. One of the difficulties that I think we have is that there are increasingly more and more demands being put on external audit, and I assume the same in terms of internal audit. Sally referred to the standards that they have to comply to. We have the same thing, and Stuart kind of touched on this in terms of, Councillor Allen touched on this in terms of the broader picture and what's happening with regards to the requirements of an audit taking longer and longer. So consequently, you've got more and more people competing in what is potentially a shrinking market. So you've then got to play into that what people now are expecting in an inflationary market in terms of wages and salaries. So therefore, it's the competitiveness that is causing us the problem, I think.
And thank you, Andrew. That's very helpful. I think this highlights how mindful we need to be of the demands we do place on existing staff when we're actually looking at prioritising some of the actions so that we can actually be effective. So I think we have a question from Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a question. Have you ever considered recruiting contractors to help with staff shortages?
Sorry, I don't quite understand. Contract. Yes, we do actually use contractors. Obviously, they're more expensive. I've had a contractor that was with me 14 months. He left last week, and I've just gone to recruit another contractor. So he starts on Monday. There again, when I'm recruiting, they also are at the older end of the spectrum. You know, they're generally people. When I go out to recruit from contractors, they're generally people that have actually retired from their main employment and are just looking to do a few months on and off to sort of get some extra funds. But they tend to be older. So I think that just reflects the market, that for some reason it's not attracting younger people at the moment. It is actually extremely challenging, we find, to audit remotely. And we do have to do that more and more, because even if we want to come into the office to carry out audit work, we are working with departments where the staff are actually working from home most of the time. And it does make the whole process much slower, auditing. It's much harder to do. So probably, I feel it certainly adds probably about, 20% of the time taken to do an audit, because you're not in a situation where you can just sit down to somebody next to someone at their desk and just talk something through. You've got to arrange a meeting, you've got to arrange a Teams call, you've got to be shown things on the screen. So it's much tougher, I think, to carry out auditing remotely.
I have another follow-up question, thinking about the future. With data analytics, you should be thinking about artificial intelligence, probably applying that to analysing data especially for internal audits.
I think we'd certainly need to consider these sorts of things in order to try and make the best use of the resources that we've got. So to try and find more efficient and effective ways of auditing, so that we're not doing lots of detailed sample checking, which takes a lot of resource. We're going to have to use the resources that we've got more smartly.
Yep. Just to add to the artificial intelligence part, it depends on the maturity and the data quality. So which what I'm listening today is like we are still at the spreadsheet level, which is pretty much level 0. So to get to that maturity, it's a very phased approach. So it would need a very high degree of maturity to get there, to be able to utilize those tools.
Thank you very much. We do have at least one question online, and then I've got another one in the chamber here, which we'll go to afterwards. So can you point out the question online that we have?
Councillor Bidwell, if you want to ask your question.
Councillor Paul Bidwell? I think he may have put it in the chat, his question.
I'll read it out.
Thank you.
So Councillor Bidwell says, when will the Council's strategic risk register be available? He couldn't see it in the report.
I couldn't see the date in the report.
Yes, the strategic risk register will come to the next audit committee. Not the July meeting. It would be the September committee.
Okay, thanks a lot.
For that question, Councillor Bidwell, and we have a question in the chamber.
I was just wondering, would it be possible to put a smaller report together highlighting the things that were partial assurances that weren't action between the 21-22 and the 22-23 report, so that we could focus on those?
Yeah, I can certainly do that. It is set out in the report, but there's so much detail it might be well hard to follow. But yes, so we can certainly do that. And actually, I've been thinking anyway. I was thinking earlier today that it might be a useful exercise to do just for the departmental management teams as well, and for the corporate management team to see that. So we've maybe got something just to monitor. You know, in the short term, to try and track through those ones that are causing concern, so that we can focus on those. I think that's a very good idea.
Thank you. That's a very good suggestion to help focus on that. Obviously, provided you've got the time to do that, that would be really appreciated. Do we have any other questions, either online or in the council chamber? Well, I'd like to thank Sally and Stuart and Andrew for joining and presenting, and also for all the excellent questions and for the excellent answers. This is the first meeting of the Governance and Audit Committee, and I'm sure everyone would join me in thanking you for the report that you put so much work into. And also, we are here to support making strong progress and moving forward. So thank you very much. And with that,
Chairman, there is a recommendation, Chairman. It is only to note the report, but
okay.
You do need to formally ask for that.
All right. So thank you for reminding me. There is a recommendation. So please could we highlight the recommendation?
Sorry, the recommendation is for the Governance and Audit Committee to note the report that I've presented here this evening with my Head of Audit and Risk Management's annual report and opinion. Okay, thank you very much for that recommendation. Would anyone like to second that recommendation?
Councillor Watts, I second.
I think the Mayor pipped you to the post there. So that is seconded. Any other comments?
I don't know who was proposing it, because Sally can't, because she's actually not a councillor. So I will propose it in that case. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for proposing, and we already have a seconder. So Councillor Allen's experience is very helpful at this committee. So thank you very much. Any other comments? Well, in that case, I will put this to the vote. So all in favour? I think that's carried unanimously. Yep. Well, thank you very much. And with that, I'm closing the meeting. Thank you.